Well, hello and good afternoon. My name's Peter Melton, and the other night I heard this most interesting gentleman speak on topics that just covered the whole spectrum of life, as it turned out. And I said, man, I need to hear this some more. So I met with Wendell Fitzgerald and said, we got to copy this, we got to get this on tape, we got to share this with the world. Profound insights on economics and land value and how that all ties into our American dream and every aspect of our lives. So, hi, we're on tape. Here we are, talking to the world.
Peter, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate you introducing me. My name's Wendell Fitzgerald. I have been involved in the studies of economics with an organization called the Henry George School for going on 33 years now. And it was a very profound thing for me originally, and has almost every day of my life I've thought about it, and it's inspired me and given me hope all these years.
Hearing you talk, it just opened up so many doors for me. So if you would, start with the American dream, why we came here, what this whole American thing was, and how it's transformed.
Yeah. Well, the American dream, basically everybody's heard of this, everybody lives it now in the current era. Mostly what it's come down to these days is talked about in terms of home ownership. But the American dream is a bit broader than that, and historically it's really about, certainly includes home ownership, but it includes coming to a place, America, for the purpose of prosperity, of getting ahead, of having the opportunity to have a real life, and establishing oneself and pursuing one's dreams. And people came here because there was the opportunity to do that. So most everybody understands a bit of the history of that. But what's not clearly understood is that what that really was about, at bottom, at fundamental, it was people came here for land. Because in the 17th and 18th century and 19th century, the way to have a life, the way to wealth and prosperity was through ownership of land, and not just ownership, but actually working the land, having land to be, having a place, a field of activity to be active on. In those centuries, it was essentially agrarian for the most part. So people understood that if they had a piece of land, they could have a life. If they could have a piece of land, they could work and make their life. In Europe and other places where people came from throughout the whole time of immigration to this country, and even up till today, where people are coming from is all the land essentially has been taken up, and the cultures and societies around that aspect of human beings' relationship to the earth has been crystallized into very rigid societies and caste systems and all of that, and so that people found themselves unable to. People with ambition, with intelligence, with wanting to do things, found themselves stifled. And when America was discovered, when the New World was discovered, the immediate thing historically was, wow, here's a new opportunity. A new world, a new promised land has opened up, perhaps, for people, perhaps down the road to take advantage of, and this was the great hope for hundreds of years for the old world to come here, and many people did, by the thousands, and many people came. I mean, it was dangerous to come here. So the motivation to come here was incredibly strong for people early on, especially to come here when it was so incredibly dangerous. The trip here was arduous and dangerous, and to get here and then start out with nothing, just with your bare hands and the tools you could carry along, how tough was that? But people came here by the truck, by the boatload, and they did that because it was, in order to have a life, you have to have land. And if you can't have land, and the best thing you can do is be a serf or a peasant on somebody else's land, and you have any ambition at all, you take the opportunity that comes available, and this is what happened. This is why people came here. And so early on, it was very, very hard to come here, but people came anyway and worked very hard to establish themselves. And then, years went by, centuries went by, things got a little bit easier because there was already established things here. People came, didn't have to work quite as hard. It wasn't so arduous. There was more of a community. And you get up into the 19th century, where all the land is taken up on the east, and what's open is the West. So again, here's a whole new wave in the 19th century, early 20th, of people coming west for land. This is the fundamental basis of the what we call the American dream. To come and get a place to be, and that allows you to pursue your dreams. So now you fast forward up to today, and now people, the American dream is not so much about establishing, a business or although that's still part of it, but it now comes down to times I ever hear it's being talked about. It's really the American dream is home ownership, which is still about land essentially, getting a place to be. Of course, the home is the quality of the home, all of that is truly important, but all of that is built on land, having one's place to be. So now the American dream, I say, has devolved into a real estate game. Nothing wrong with this. People need have always and will always need a place to live and to work and to do their business and to play and have their life. But now, in order to pursue the American dream, you've got to get into the real estate market. And when you understand what real estate is based on land and buildings, houses and apartments and whatever, all the structures that we build, but it's all based on land. So in order to have the American dream, you have to go after land, essentially. And now what's happened, especially in the last 50 years, everybody understands this game, whether you're an economist or not. Everybody understands in order to buy a house, you have to come up with a down payment. You have to probably get a mortgage, and you have to you're chasing housing prices, which really are the land and improvement prices. They're going up and up and up. So now there's all this motivation to get in. Buy a piece of real estate as soon as you can, even if you have to mortgage yourself to the hilt, because what's going to happen is the cost is going to keep going up. Major news is the so-called housing bubble. People are not being able to sell their houses. The values are stagnating, and so now we're in a crisis. And the only time people actually ever ask fundamental questions and say, well, what do we do about this, is when there's pain and suffering. And we are now in a place, now whether this continues, whether this collapses further, it remains to be seen. But we've gotten to this place because Americans are now real estate speculators. They are forced to. There's no other way to do this but to buy in. And now, even if the only motivation was just to have a place to live, part of the thinking about it when you buy a house is what's going to happen to the value in the future. And now everybody's depending on that value going up.
Right, and it has to continue to go up in order for the game to continue.
Yeah.
And how does that affect, when you shared about how that affects our children and our grandchildren?
Well, you have to understand that if buying in now is difficult because you're chasing the rising prices, in order for you to make money on what you're buying now, the price has to go up, and that means that your children and your grandchildren, all these future generations, have to be willing to continue to pay this ongoing high price. And what's really going on with the housing bubble, it's not houses that is going up in value, it's the land that's going up.
Right, and the value of the land, as you were saying, is all about how the community made that land worthy and more valuable, exactly. But then the money doesn't go back to the community.
Exactly. So what's really interesting to understand, really what's going on now, is to understand the economics of land. And the truth of it is that the community creates land value 100%. People say, well, I don't understand economics, or I don't, it's not my interest. Truth is that everybody's an economist. Everybody understands a ton of stuff about economics, because that's the water we swim in all the time.
Yeah, and the way it weaves into every aspect of our lives is fascinating. So check out the next video, number 2, on the economics of land.
And before we go, if this is the thing that you look at, go Google Henry George on the web, because a lot of these ideas, most of these ideas come from the Henry George, from the works of Henry George and from the Henry George schools in the U.S. If you Google that, you'll find a whole bunch more information about Henry George and his ideas and all of this economics.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah, share the information.